Welcome back to Dwayne's World. Today we're going to actually work on the airplane. I know I've kind of dilly-dallied long enough and you're saying, Dwayne, do some actual work. So we're going to do that today. These airplanes originally came with just two hinges on the rudder and on each side of the elevator. And over the course of time, as improvements were made to the design, they have what's called a third hinge kit. And essentially you're just adding a third hinge in the middle. And so we're going to be following the instructions. Unfortunately, this third hinge kit did not have instructions that came with it, so I'm relying on the manual for how the original hinges were installed and having to adapt that a little bit for what we're going to do today. So we'll take a quick look at the manual, and then we'll get to work. When all else fails, read the instructions. So this was the instructions for laying out the hinge locations on the elevator and the rudder. And a little bit of a parts list there. And over the course of time, they decided to add a stainless steel rivet in the middle of each bracket. Now, at the time that this was originally built in '95 or thereabouts, they were still putting aluminum rivets in all the holes. So we'll be drilling out the center rivets and installing the stainless rivets. I purchased some of those. So we'll be installing those first, and then moving on to the third hinge. Now, the way they talk about doing the hinges is before you put the covering on. Well, as you can see, the covering is already on these components. And so I can't do it quite like they're showing there. I'll be able to do it partially, but they're talking about locating the hinge brackets, taping it on there, and then clamping it with a clamp or vice grips of some sort, and then drilling your holes to keep everything aligned. Well, we can't clamp that way, but we can tape, and I have an idea how we can keep things aligned. So when you have two hinges, they're not going to bind, but as soon as you add a third hinge, then you want to make sure all three are aligned. So we're going to be doing that with an idea I have, and I'll show you that shortly. So this is the final instructions on laying out and aligning all the hinges. So first thing I'm going to do is drill out those center rivets. Well, as we can see here, got 3 aluminum rivets on each side. We're going to drill out the center ones. Now I'm told, I haven't done a lot of this, but I did look up on an EAA, Experimental Aircraft Association website, and got some tips from them on how to do riveting and to drill out rivets. Chances are, if you're riveting an airplane, you're going to be drilling some out and doing them over again. So they recommend using numbered drill bits, a little more closer to the correct sizes that you need. In this case, for a 3/16 rivet, which is what these are, you need a number 11 drill bit to drill for the hole, for the rivet. To drill them out, you don't want to accidentally make the hole bigger, so I have the next size smaller, which is a 12. So we're going to give that a try. And they say to drill it part way in and then work. Once it gets worked in, you can kind of break it free in there, so we'll give that a try here. Voila. Well, I think I'm just going to try and, since my drill bit is smaller than the actual original hole, this should just clean that out. Yeah, That seems to work just fine. That's what we got out. So one of the things you're supposed to do when you rivet is to deburr the hole. Now these brackets are already covering up the front of the hole, and hopefully the original builder did deburr those holes on the outside. So I can't do anything about those, but I can make sure that at least these are deburred on the inside. So we got this little handy tool, and it's got a little swivel head on there. And I use something very similar in the pipe trades. I'm a plumber by trade. And when you're cutting copper pipe, you always want to ream the inside of the pipe so that it doesn't have any turbulence there, or sharp edges, of course. Makes for better flow, less noise in the piping. And so whenever you cut a piece of pipe, you take the reamer out and ream out the inside of the hole. So this tool works very similar. The blades are shaped a little differently. This one has a little skinnier blade that can get inside that hole. So we're just going to get it in there and clean that out a little bit. Now the reason you're supposed to ream those out is not for looks, but if you leave the burrs on there, it can create places for it to stress crack. And so you always want to have a smooth surface, and it keeps things from cracking and becoming fatigued. So that's why we do that. Now we're going to put some rivets in. I did a few practice ones the other day. And get a pad underneath this so we're not scratching up the... That should be better. This rivet gun is done. I can't even get the old rivet out. So away it goes. So I had to go to Harbor Freight and get some new rivet guns. I had to get two. Turns out that that not so expensive rivet guns won't handle the 3/16 stainless. It's just too tough for them. And so I still needed a small one to get in tight spaces. This was only like 10 bucks. We'll see how long it lasts, but for the aluminum ones, it should do okay. There's not a lot of rivets to do in this project anyway. But this is the Boss Haas, and it's a little heavier duty, should work just fine, and that'll handle the stainless steel rivets. Now altogether, I spent about 45 bucks on the two, about the price of a modern day McDonald's meal, the way things are going. So it wasn't too bad, and should last for the duration of the project anyway. But you know, the dirty little secret is that the only reason we do projects is to have an excuse to buy new tools. So I got to buy new tools. Anyway, we'll get to work and do some riveting. All right, let's get this guy in here. I had to drill out the old one. Did that off camera. I want to prop that up a little bit. I have a high-tech solution, paper towels, that's the quicker picker upper. All right, let's get this rivet in here and give this a shot. Sweet. It works. And that, by the way, was the first rivet of my project. Now that is solid. In some ways, this is actually easier than the smaller one. All secure. I meant to do that. So I want to make sure that both of these will line up before I try to fit the other one in there. All right. Now I can be confident myself that if I slide some hinges on the center one here, that it'll be lined up. And then before I pull this rod, I'll have this rod through there and make sure everything works cleanly this way. Then I'll pull the rod out, separate these two, and then I'll drill in the new hinge locations here. Well, good morning. It's Sunday morning, and I'm back at it. On Thursday night when I was working on this, I ran into some issues with my phone as I was recording. My phone died, so that's a YouTuber noob failure there. So anyway, I was having some good momentum, so I went ahead and finished up that portion of that elevator and horizontal stabilizer. And I'll show you a completed product, and then we'll actually do one on camera so you can kind of see how I did it. And then I'll get to the rudder. Okay, so here we are. This is the left elevator and horizontal stabilizer. As you can see, we've got no binding. It's nice and solid without any slop, but there's no binding as well. And there's our third hinge. I still have to put my center stainless rivets in there, but I just wanted to check the fit and make sure there was, before I started putting in the stainless rivets. They're a little more difficult to drill out, so I wanted to make sure that fit well. So anyway, we got good action there, and we're going to set up and do the other side. I did want to mention one thing. Now, if you notice, what I'm using currently right now is a pin through there. And that's what originally came with the airplane, was just a pin with a hole in it, and then you put in a keeper ring to keep it from coming out. As improvements are made to the design over the years, they changed that to bolts with castle nuts and cotter pins, which is a little more aircrafty, and it's safer and a better design. So with this third hinge kit came all the bolts and stuff to do that, change them all out. So it'll all be improved with the new and improved bolting method. Well, my first idea was to take this rod and slip it through the first hinge, slide on the third hinge brackets loose, and then align it with the other one, and then I could use that to align my center hinge brackets. But I found it was too difficult to try to tape those middle hinges any kind of accuracy, so it was easier just to take it out and do it similarly to what they do for the outer hinges, and that is to mark it and then drill it and then assemble it. And like I did on the other one, I riveted the aluminum rivets on there just to make sure that all three hinges align before I commit to the stainless steel rivets. So what we're going to do is we got the pins that were originally going to be used on these, and get the hinges together. Now I can measure and make a mark centering that. Let's so I can get a correct mark for the center hinge there. All right, 18 1/4, right there. All right, now we can pull these pins out and get the drill in here. Well, the first thing we've got to do now is lay out the hinges. I'm going to do it on the elevator first. On the horizontal stabilizer, these are farther apart, and you want to get them as close as you can to the mating surface there. So we'll get those other ones set first, and then we'll put this together and tape the other two together as close as we can. I think for alignment purposes, I'm going to hold this up a little closer to me. Now there's a seam kind of going along here, and you're trying to find the center of the tube. Now, if with the original hinges, you were able to lay it on a table and scribe a line right on the edge of the tube. With the covering on here, it's a little more difficult to find that center, but you can kind of see it along there. So I'm trying to get these hinges as perfectly on the front there as possible. I want them straight this way as well as top to bottom, because we're trying to get it so we're not going to bind with that other two hinges there. Again, if you happen to be a challenger builder and you're saying this must be the professional, official way to do it, I'm just an amateur here, and this is not a official how-to video. This is my best attempt to do this right, and just sharing this with you. And this YouTube video series is just for the fun of it. So I'm going to have some fun with it, and hope you're having some fun with it as well. So there we are. So now we have these hinges taped up. I'll leave this aside, get the other one lined up, and make sure that the marks are still aligning. And we'll get the other two on there. Okay, so we'll get these pins back in here. The problem is it's really difficult to get down in there and see make any sort of mark, but I will try. All right. Now we will use this to check the hinges before we commit to that those stainless rivets, but I'm going to set it aside for now. I will check this fit one more time. Once I get these taped up, I'm just going to slip that together, make sure these aren't too close or too far apart before we commit to drilling. I know this is riveting content. Hey, I'm a dad. There's going to be some dad jokes, all right? Line it up with my mark right there. Nice thing about tape, if it doesn't quite line up, you just peel it off and check it again. Before you commit to drilling. All right. Okay, we got our original pins in there. Let's slip that third pin in there. And we'll see if it lines up. It does not. I was just curious if it was because the elevator was slightly out of alignment or my hinges were. I don't want to create undue stress on the surfaces if they're correct. Using the Mark 1 eyeball here to see it. Looks like my hinges are just slightly out of alignment there, so I want to peel the tape off and get those fixed. Well, upon further investigation, I discovered that this particular hinge is not quite angled correctly, and that was done by the original builder. I don't know if you could sight down and see that, but you see it's tilted up some, and so that was throwing the alignment off the other one. So what I'm going to try and do is drill out these rivets and re-rivet it and try to align that hinge in its proper location. I'm not sure it's going to be successful. Well, I'll give it a try. Worst case, it ends up back the way it is, and I'll just have to make the adjustment on the middle hinge there. And now, since I don't know if the original builder deburred these or not, I will now take the opportunity to do that. Is that our deburring tool? That's the one. I'm going to take a little file and just kind of buff that down a little bit and see if I can get a little better angle on that. I think it might have just been a case where the covering had a little bit of a bump there, and when he riveted it, it just kind of ended up, yeah. We'll see. I can see it's a little better in alignment there, so we'll give that a shot. We'll see how it goes. A lot better than it was. Right. Yeah, much better. That's looking like it's supposed to. Not sure why that one didn't come out. Might have to nip that one off, drill it out, and reset that one. But now that it's where I want it, I'm going to set that stainless rivet in there, so that'll lock that in. Ah, nice. So the first one went together really nice and it's lined right up. The second one, I think the holes were a little off for whatever reason. And I don't know if the previous builder tweaked that one to match this one, but this one is correct. And this one was still kicked up some when I tried to the pre-fit the rivets in there. And so I didn't want to get in a situation where I get it all riveted in and start torquing on it to get things lined up. I wanted to not weaken this structure at all. So I took this bracket, put it in a vise, and just ever so slightly peened this curvature a little bit more so that this bracket would then fit more correctly. So it sits really nicely on there now, and I'm not torquing on the tube at all or weakening the rivets. I'll be able to rivet this up, and it should be nice and solid. That'll hold that alignment there. There we go. Really close. Okay, so we're going to check and make sure with our rod here that everything lines up with the existing before we line up the other hinges. So that's a real nice fit there. And as I sight down, I can see through all the holes. Everything's lining up really nicely. So now we can go back and make sure our other hinges are correct, and we'll line up as well with the rod. Okay, now I got the rod through all 3 hinges. Everything's lining up really nice, no binding. It's not sloppy and it's not, gritty and binding either. It's got a nice smooth operation here. So we'll pull the rod out and we'll get to drilling out these holes. So an issue that I'm running into is the rivet gun not quite lining up with the being too tight of a tolerance there. And so a lot of times what guys will do is they'll grind off a little bit off the sides to get into tight spots like that. And I think maybe a cheaper rivet gun would have a smaller tip there, but I kind of appreciate the robustness of this thing. So I'm going to take this, put it in the bench vise, and put the grinder to it, and polish off a little bit off the side there, so I can get these without having to have the rivet, bent over slightly, when it's nice and straight, so it gets a nice, good grip there. So we'll take care of that. All right. Well, we'll get this thing clamped in here. And yes, I do have all my safety gear on. I have had stuff dug out of my eye before in my younger years. It's not something that I enjoyed, so I'll not repeat that. I'll give that a try. All right, well, let's move this over here. That's a nice fit there now. You can see I just polished off some of the side there. Flattened one side. I could do both sides, but I can just turn it over if I need to get another tight spot. All right, well, let's get this riveted up here. And there we are. Now we'll get the other side done. I'm going to try something. I've just been slipping those rivets in there before, but there's a thing called a cleco. You pilots and builders know what those are. I've never tried one, but I did get a cleco kit, and I thought I would give it a try. These are Cleco pliers, and the Cleco slips in like so, and it squeezes this, and you see those little, that slips into the hole, and then when it pulls back, it expands and holds the pieces together. So Cleco, I think we'll keep using it. All you pilots and builders out there, why aren't you using Clecos? I forgot I had them. You know, really, I was getting along just fine just putting the rivets in there to hold it, but, you know, putting Clecos in is kind of more of the airplane-y thing to do when you're building, so kind of want to get the whole airplane building experience. We'll peel the tape off of there, deburr, and rivet. Boy, those Clecos are so handy. Forgot my holder, that's why it was sliding all around. Now this big guy seems to work a little bit better. I'll save that blue in for the tight spots. It's working. And there you have it. Now the balance is done. We'll lay this out, slip the rod through there, and make sure that it all works good. Get the camera around where you guys can see it. What you looking over there for anyway? So, got the rod in there. Get the colorful side up. But, so there's the horizontal stabilizer. This is the elevator. And now it has 3 hinges. Now while it's on the airplane, this is the control horn. And so the control would push and pull on this to operate the elevator. So it's great that I have a wide and ranging audience here. I know there's a couple kids that like to watch this too, so a special shout out to Christopher and Lucy who like to watch these videos too. You know, at our church we have a lot of little kids around, and it never fails, you know, running around after church or whatever, and they bang into each other, bonk their heads or something, and you hear them crying. And you know, I'm a grandparent now, and having kids, you kind of learn how things go and what different cries mean. And you know, a lot of times as a parent, if you're smart, after a while you kind of think, if I don't react, it's going to be okay. You know, they'll just kind of walk it off. But you know, the new parent is always going to go, oh, you know, and run over there and make a big deal about it, and they can kind of learn to play that a little bit as kids. But you know, there's different kinds of cries, and you kind of figure that out over time. And so I've kind of observed this thing. So if a kid cries and they go, and they take an immediate breath and then cry again, yeah, give them a hug and a Band-Aid. They're going to be okay. But if they do the and you count the seconds, 1 second is it's going to take more than a hug. 2 seconds means it's probably a bruise or maybe a decent sized cut. 3 or 4 seconds, you may be taking a trip to the ER, because after that, their face starts to turn red, you know, and no sound's coming out, right? And then all of a sudden they let go of the big whale. I think, okay, this one's probably pretty serious. Anyway, just an observation. Thought I'd pass it on. Another thought I wanted to share is why I'm building this airplane. And the main reason is I love to fly. And it's been a long time since I've flown, and getting back into it, took some lessons the other day. And but the other thing you realize too, that I'm 64, and as you get older and you observe people older than yourself start to withdraw and retract from life. And there's a verse in Ecclesiastes 12:5. I looked it up. I'm not that smart. But it talks about the effects of aging, and when it talks about fear of heights and fear of dangers in the streets. And so a lot of times, you know, you end up driving down the freeway at 45 miles an hour, and fear can kind of close in on you as you get older. And for me, I recognize that about myself, and this is in a minor way, less than just a desire to go flying again. It's a desire to push back a little bit and to conquer my fears. You know, when I was in construction working in the field, I was able to, without a second thought, run up a ladder with one hand with a piece of 10-inch cast iron, or 4-inch cast iron on my shoulder, and then slip it up in the hangers, and my balance was great, and I didn't have to even think twice about it. After being away from it for a while, then you get on the ladder again, your knees are a little wobbly, and until you get used to it again, and then you overcome that fear, and then you're running up and down the ladder again. So I didn't want to allow that to happen to myself, and kind of make it so that I'm facing my fears and pushing back, and to stay as functional as an adult as I can. Anyway, a little extra credit for today, and we'll see you next time. We'll do some more building. See you on Dwayne's World.